Lacey, why don't you start us off?
You bet. Well, hi guys. Happy Tuesday. My husband and I planted in the Little Apple, Manhattan, Kansas, almost 6 years ago. So we are a university town. Go Cats! If you're familiar at all with college football. So we're university town, and then we're military town. So the third largest Army base in America is right in our backyard. So we're about 60% of our church is military, which we love. But that also means with a college community too, that we transition about 40% of our church every year, which is awesome because we're always sending people out. Well, it's really hard because we're always saying goodbye. But my husband and I, we're called there. Before that, we were a part of North Point Church in Springfield, Missouri for 11 years. And we love church planting. That's all we've done is be a part of church plants. The best part of my life right now is we've got a 10-year-old and 7-year-old, and they just got baptized on Valentine's Day. So that was awesome. So I'm celebrating that.
Awesome. Good afternoon, y'all. I'm John Van Pay. My wife and I, Stephanie, started Gateway Fellowship in 2007. And we're over in San Antonio, and we had a vision to start other churches, really inspired by that, came to an event like this in Florida, an exponential conference, and just were inspired to be a church that would start other churches. And so we were like, all right, on our first year anniversary, we announced where we were going to start, and we were meeting in a movie theater at the time, and I got called up to the upstairs where they count the money. I knew something was wrong. It was like somebody stole money. And there was a letter of a guy I'd never met before, and it was a letter. And we took the offering. At the end of the service, we announced we're going to start a church, a Spanish church. And the letter was, if you trust God for the vision, He'll provide. And there was a check for $400,000. And that was year one. And so we started that church.
Do it for me, Lord.
That first church didn't make it. Neither did our second church. Our third church went Anglican. But our last 6 campuses have made it. So, man, I just want to encourage you. Glad y'all are here. Have the faith. Let's be reproducing churches. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Dave Crosby. I live in the Pocono Mountains, Pennsylvania, the home of the heart-shaped tub for all the honeymooners. And we're actually a bedroom community to New York City and northern New Jersey. And so our church, we planted in 2003. It's a very multicultural, multi-generational church. It's a lot of fun. People from the city, people from the mountain. It's kind of like if the housewives of New Jersey hooked up with the guys from Duck Dynasty and had a baby. That's our church. A lot of camouflage and stilettos walking around. So, but we've had a great ride. We've had a failed church plant, but we're getting ready to get back up on that horse and launch our next campus in October of 22. So, it's been great. I have 4 kids. My little girl, Kate, she's turned 18 and going to go to the Big Apple to go to school on a full ride, King's College, and I'm really proud of her. Then 3 boys, 15, 11, and 13.
Hey everybody, my name is John Martin. I serve as the lead pastor at Victorville First Assembly of God in Southern California. We came to Victorville from the Pacific Northwest 14 years ago. Took a church that was going through a split, and God saw fit to heal that. And 2 years into it, got a call from our superintendent, Assemblies of God superintendent, and said, John, I need some help with some churches in your backyard. And so we jumped into this concept of revitalization, and that's how it started for us. Now we are 13 campuses into it, and our mode of operation is now we're going from 13 to 30 is the goal, and we'll see what God ends up doing with all of that. We revitalized 3 churches before we planted our first church, and so now we're about equal with revitalizations and plants within those 13 campuses. But it's a joy to do what we're doing, and just fun to be able to be with you today.
So awesome. So we're grateful to be in the room with you guys. I know that what we're about to uncover maybe we'll bring up some of the wounds of this past year, but also some of the victories and some of the triumphs. And it goes without saying, 2020 was shattering for many of us. I was here at this conference when everything really started to turn, and then the very next week or two, everything kind of closed down. And I think we're still in recovery mode, if we're honest. A lot has changed. But I would like to start the discussion off by maybe giving us one habit that you formed over the last year that you'd never thought that you would form, or maybe it's a hobby, something maybe personal, and then we'll get into the church stuff later. But what's one thing that has come out of 2020, COVID, that you never thought would be a thing in your life, but you've now either had the time to do it or were forced into do it because of the change of pace and the change of life?
Zoom calls, right? Zoom calls. I just like, really? So, I mean, there's days where I'm on 8 Zoom calls in a day, and it's like, what in the world is this? So, who's tired of Zoom calls? Yeah, right, I got it.
Dave, anything?
So a new habit that I formed in COVID, yeah, I found out right before COVID hit that I was gluten intolerant, and my son tested positive for celiac. And so it started us out on a whole new health journey, and so that's, not being able to, eat what you typically, and I love to cook. And so, we haven't gone back into in-person services, and my wife and I pastor the church together. So it's been really crazy, 4 kids, basically back to homeschooling. We started out as a homeschool family, and then got them into public school. Now so the last year, all of us in our house together. And so a new habit, I guess I would say, that has formed for my wife and I, we started counseling, because as you can only imagine, you're trying to educate 4 kids, you're trying to run a church, it's all you talk about, there's nowhere to go, you're cooped up in your house together. And, it can cause some significant stress on a marriage and a relationship. And so we started counseling, and it's been the best decision we've ever made in our life, and it's really helped me to unpack some stuff that I didn't know was there, and it's made me a better, I believe, just human being, and better husband, a better dad, better leader, better pastor, better husband. And I hated it at first. I mean, I'd get up and preach, oh, you need to get counseling, but that's not for me. And it was the most awful first 3 months. But now, about like 8 months looking into the rearview mirror, it's the best decision we've ever made to invest in our marriage. And it's not like, our marriage was on the rocks or anything, but it just wasn't what it could be and all that it could be. And my wife had told me that for many years, and I just never understood what she meant. And now I kind of get it. And so just taking that time to intentionally invest in our marriage, which has turned out to be a lot bigger than just that. It's just who you are as a person. And the more self-awareness you have, I think you just become a nicer human being, and you become a better leader all around person. So that's been a great habit.
That's huge. I hope you guys are taking notes. Counseling, it's huge. That's awesome.
Yeah, the mental health is a big one. If we, as leaders, we're not healthy, we don't have that oxygen mask, it's hard to help others. I went a few years ago, I kind of experienced my dark night of the soul and experienced a little burnout and stress, and I had a guy, had a really prophetic gift. He encouraged me to do new things. So Mike, I love that. What are the new habits? And he challenged me, like, don't ride the same old mountain bike trails. Ride new trails, new songs, getting outside. And during this year, everything has been so inside, so digital. And I think for me, getting outside, I didn't used to have the patience for fishing, but I have developed a love of fishing with my son and having that patience. But being outdoors and new songs, new trails, new prayer watches, being outside, experiencing some new things have really helped keep my mind right and healthy, as well as, the emotion, spiritual, how it all goes together.
That's awesome. Lacey, any new habits? Any new
Man,
habits?
I have found I can drink at least 18 Cokes a day. I think the outdoors for sure. So, forcing ourselves outdoors. And there's this thing like a giant kickball. If you've never seen them, I mean, they're ginormous. They're like those huge yoga balls. And so we got 2 of those because the first one busted because we played it so much. But literally, I mean, just the 4 of us in our backyard just playing kickball. And there's just something so spiritual about playing with your kids and playing with your team when you were able to be together. We played pickleball. We set up pickleball in our church lobby just for our staff. If you've not played pickleball, it's so much fun. It's, I think, the most growing sport for the senior citizens, but it's awesome. But honestly, I think it's not a new habit, but my time with Jesus has been the most rich in this last year, and I would not be sitting here if it hadn't been.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we give some context church-wise, who's back into in-person gatherings? When did you start back? How long were you just online for? I know that we have 4 different states represented up here, probably 4 different approaches. And so let's give some context to those that are joining us as to when you shut down, how long were you shut down for, and then are you still not in person, and what have the alternatives been for ministry during this season?
Well, we shut down pretty much like everybody else March 13th. March 7th of last year, I think it was 6th or 7th, we didn't have people come to the church. We just did an online service, and then everything went into lockdown. We're in Northeast Pennsylvania, so it's almost all people from New York, New Jersey, and we're the epicenter, back when this thing really broke out. And so we were shut down till the middle of July, reopened for a couple months, and then my wife and I got COVID, and thank God we're doing okay. She got it a lot worse than I did, and the guy that gave it to us and mostly our whole staff was a consultant. He was in town. He didn't realize he had it. It almost took his life. Thank God he survived.
Wow.
And but then when our whole staff got COVID, we shut down, and then the spike happened right before Christmas, and then the post-Christmas spike happened. And so we've not reopened, but this Sunday we're going to go back and open. So we're looking forward to that.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah, but for us, in terms of like how we've handled that, of course, everything went digital and Zoom, and I think it's been amazing that we've seen the church, even grow through this season, putting new people in groups, new people on serve teams. The only thing we've never really been able to crack the code on is how to identify new people. And we've tried a lot of different ways to do that. But keeping the church together, connected digitally in that space. One of the cool things we do with all our serve teams, we've got 600-700 people on a serve team in our church, and on average, we have about 250 to 300 of those serve team members meet every Sunday morning prior to one of the services online. They meet for community and to talk and to pray together, and that's really helped. And then they go to attend together digitally, and that's really helped, keep our people connected with one another. And so that's one of the little, things that work well for us.
So you're starting back in
person
this Sunday.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah,
that's huge.
We don't know what's going to happen too. I do feel like a sense, our church is multicultural. It's about 33% white, 33% black, 33% Hispanic. And, when we first went back, our church never looked as white as it looked. And because it has hit the African American community and the health disparities that do exist. And so it's been really tough, but I don't know. I think now with the rollout of the vaccine, I do sense, and now after a year of this, people are wanting to get back together, and we have some ideas we're working on to see that happen. But
Are you going back with one service, or is it multiple services?
We're going back
registrations, or
no, we're going back multiple services. We're not doing the whole registration thing. We're not going to turn anybody away. We require all of our serve team members and our staff to wear masks. We ask everybody else to wear a mask, but we have some no maskers. Those guys that are from the woods,
from North Carolina. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they kind of look like you, actually.
Yeah, probably. Bass Pro hat.
Yeah.
But, those are my people.
Yeah. So, but we do ask everybody to wear a mask, and we'll see what happens on Sunday.
That's great. Well, That's an encouraging, probably for many here that maybe are in the process of regathering, or everyone is restarting. It was the largest reset button for everyone. Attendance has never mattered less than it matters right now, and engagement is what matters more. Community is what matters more, and understanding what the health of the church is really no longer based upon attendance, because it's been a slow dial back to in-person gatherings. How about you in California? I'm sure that it's a little different.
Yeah, so we have the word pivot. I think we've used literally every week. Okay, we're pivoting again this week, and this is what we're going to do. And so we went from obviously being shut down and immediately going online to now being in a situation. Well, then opening back up. I remember Easter last year. We were in the parking lot. And we brought all the radio stuff to be able to do a broadcast in the parking lot. And everybody comes in, drives in, turns on your radio, and we're doing our thing. For about 5 weeks, the governor backed off just a little bit. And, in the state of California, we have a pretty, famous governor right now. And the huge push for a recall of and putting him back on the ballot, which probably is going to happen. And anyway, because there's, I got an amen, got a witness to that, right? And so, we were inside for a little while, and yes, we were social distancing, and we've taped off pews, and we've done this, we've done that. I mean, just all the typical stuff, masks and everything else. And then we're back outside. We built a stage. We're in the parking lot, and during the summer months, and in the high desert, it's warm in the summer. In the wintertime, it gets cold, and so when November hit for us, we would have people literally sitting in the parking lot in 40-degree weather. And so we decided, we're going to keep people safer inside. So we defied the governor. Yes, I'm admitting that. We defied the governor. Our board was I was shocked at how overwhelmingly unanimous it was. Just we need to meet, we're missing this. And so we did. So that's what we did. And obviously dealt with the same stuff with December, January timeframe. And now continuing on, and we know that not only New York got a favorable Supreme Court nod, but also state of California has done the same thing. And so we're just moving straight forward ahead at this point. So that's what we're doing.
So we are in Kansas and Manhattan, and we reopened in June. So we were back in person in June, but it was, mask mandate and physical distance mandate. So our county just released, as of yesterday, that we no longer, that distancing is encouraged, but not mandated. So that's huge. So, we've been doing the wedding style seating and, dismissing row by row, all that good stuff. But as of tomorrow night, at First Wednesday, we'll have room 9, which is our main auditorium. We're in a movie theater as well. So that room will be for those who don't care about distancing. And then in room 10, which is right next door, our media venue, we still have, the stickers on the ground and every other row, like PVC pipe and all the craziness, blocked off. But yeah, that's kind of what we're doing. So nothing super creative outside of what I think probably a lot of us are doing right now.
I think we could have done better. I like that approach of, at least because everybody's on two different sides, so why not have an opportunity? We didn't do that well. We had digital only in March in that 1 week, and then we had drive-in church as well. We did that for a couple of months, and then we're in San Antonio, so we were able to have in person pretty quickly. And we just heard from the governor over the last hour that he said next Wednesday, 100% businesses open, masks coming off. So we're really excited about that. But it's been a challenge.
It has.
During this time for sure.
So on top of all of the COVID stuff, there has been some other things that have gone on this year as well, this past year. We had the virus, obviously. There's been some tensions, maybe that always existed but came to the surface during the death of George Floyd. And then there's always been some tensions between Republicans and Democrats, but they were also surfaced during the election year. And I know every state is different and every church culture is obviously different, but how have you as a leader led your church, maybe one or two ways that if you could do it again, if you could repeat 2020 again, and you knew that a pandemic was coming, some racial unrest that was going to really turn some cities upside down was coming, and you knew that the most divisive election year, at least in my lifetime, I'm only 33, so I've only been able to vote 2.5 times, but the polarization of mask, no mask, black, white, and then Republican, Democrat, and then how polarized the churches have become, especially in a diverse church, especially in California. How have you handled that as a leader? How has that messed with you as a leader? And if you could do it all over again, what would be one thing that you might have changed about your approach in leading through 2020?
the big takeaway I've had, and the reality is Jesus said, in this world you're going to have trials, but take heart, I have overcome the world. And so I've determined, all right, the time, it feels like we're getting more in the last days. And so what if these are the birth pains? What if we're going to have more trials? And so if it's going to happen, and Jesus, we really believe that he has overcome the world, then we have to believe in the redemptive part of this. We have to choose. Am I going to be the victim and be negative and all the things that are taken? Or am I going to have a positive attitude and go, Lord, where is the redemptive? How can this be an opportunity for the kingdom of God? Because the reality is we just came out of this kind of pandemic, but we're South Texas, so we got hit a couple of weeks ago with the snow apocalypse, and our church, our home, no power, no water. We had 20 people living in our home for a little bit, and then we lost power and water, and they're all gone. And I really wanted our church to be like a beacon of light, but we had lost power as well as a church. So the takeaway is like, man, I don't want to get caught with our, not prepared. And so I've been thinking, where our team has really been praying. And so our next Kingdom Builder project that we're going to have is we're going to be ready for the next disaster, the next trial. And so we're like brainstorming, what if we can be proactive, not responsive in this.
Wow.
Be proactive, so let's be ready. We're going to have this mini Convoy of Hope trailer. If they're not available, have the generator, have the water, the MRAs, and then run to the problem area and we do a school of ministry where we're training church planting teams, but we're going to have a team that's just available to go wherever the need is. And if it's a hurricane, or what if we can run to that and be ready and maybe start a church out of it, but be that, that beacon of hope and not be responsive. That's our big takeaway, to lean into it.
To be proactive and not responsive. It's very, very good. If you could do 2020 all over again.
Well, certainly wouldn't have COVID. I mean, but in terms of the racial reconciliation part, in terms of the election, so we're 18 years in. I'm in a blue state, but it's a multicultural church, so it's probably about 50-50, Republican, Democrat, and you heard the other stats. And so we're literally for years, we've been talking about this stuff. There's nothing we've ever not, talked about in church. Because if you can't talk about it in church, where are you going to talk about it? At the bar? I mean, come on. We need to get God's redemptive plan on history and his heart for his creation. So these are issues we've addressed for years ad nauseum, not just in a sidebar somewhere in an appendix or whatever. Now, this is Sunday morning, conversations. It's part of who we are in our culture. And so for years, we've talked about these issues. And, we've really set some boundaries, too, in terms of our, election years. You leave the hat, you leave the bumper, you don't bring it in the church. Wow. And, and so we've kind of, built that into our culture. And in terms of the racial reconciliation, we've had these conversations many, many times before, so it was really easy for us to just continue to lean in and refresh. And we did a deal where, especially with I'm the chief I'm the chaplain for the police department. Chief's a really good friend. I know a lot of the officers and had spent a lot of time with them. So when this was all happening, it was causing some massive conflict within our community. And so, we just had them all come to church, and I had did a panel on a Sunday morning, and we talked about it, and really was just like, hey, tell me your story. And so we heard from the chief how he grew up in the city in an all-black neighborhood, and now he's white and he's the chief. And we had the officers tell their story, and just really teaching people how to listen to one another. Because if you can just teach people how to listen and begin to empathize and accept, you see, the only way you can really build trust, and any relationship that's going to be healthy is going to be built on trust. The only way to build trust is through empathy and acceptance. And to develop empathy, you have to hear somebody's story. So we'd spent a lot of time trying to help our people be intentional about building relationships within our church family with people that don't look like them, talk like them, dress like them, think like them, vote like them, and and be very intentional about that. So when this storm came, it made our church even stronger. I was so thankful. I got friends calling me from all over the country. So-and-so's leaving my church, and they're like one of my largest donors because I'm not speaking out in favor enough of Trump. And these people are leaving my church because I'm not speaking out, enough in favor of BLM. And I felt terrible for them because, they got caught unprepared because these were issues that they haven't been talking about for years.
Right.
And so I would just encourage people, depending on, where you are and what part of the country and what your community looks like, your church should be a reflection of that community.
Right.
And if it's not, in my opinion, it's sin. And it doesn't line up with the gospel mandate. But so I would get it in advance and have an open dialogue within your church and model it for them and lead them in that way. And you come through elections because they happen every 4 years. It's not like the sky is falling when so and so gets elected and so doesn't.
Right. That's very helpful. Thank you so much. So helpful.
Pastor Mark Batterson was on a Zoom call a couple weeks ago, and I wish that I could have been on that call a year ago because he asked an admiral a question. How do you deal with crisis early on when this was all happening in March or April? And the admiral said, I reserve the right to get smarter later. That you've got to do the best you can with what you know.
Wow.
And I was like,
it's really good.
that is so helpful for the next crisis.
Right.
We can reserve the right. Like, it's okay that I don't know everything. I'm not going to know everything. You're not going to know everything. And to release that pressure, because I think during this season, my husband and I both just felt like, man, we want to empathize. We want to learn. We want to, really honor our city and make sure that we're, doing the masks and honoring what we can. But then what's the line of like, okay, is this a sin or is this an opinion? So I think if I could go back, I would remind myself, it's kingdom. So keep Jesus the center of it. Don't get distracted. And watch your own emotion before you go on Facebook Live. Watch your own emotion before you have a conversation. Make sure it's Jesus speaking and not your personal opinion.
That's so great. So good. So helpful.
I would add to that, obviously stay as close to Scripture as you can. In that right now, it's just, at least in California, the popular thing is the whole cancel culture thing. And so if you don't agree with me, I'm going to just push everything aside. And so let's not fuel that. And I've told our staff that. We got 14 on our Victorville staff, pastors, and I'm going, guys, be careful how you say what you say. And just be at that point where, we're going to listen, we're going to love, and we're going to acknowledge. We had, in the midst of this, an opportunity to bring one of our campus pastors in, who's an African-American brother, and he and I did a dialogue as a part of that message that Sunday, and it opened up a door to hear more of his story. And we don't know what it's like to be in someone else's shoes, so we need to be careful that we put ourselves in their shoes before we respond. But in the midst of responding, obviously, what would Jesus do in this moment? How would he love? How would he respond to people? And making sure that you don't go to the extremes, but be careful in loving people that you don't hit the trigger points of what you say in social media, that all of a sudden somebody's like, what? There have been people that have posted some things that I've said to the staff, do not even respond to that because you will fuel it. It's not worth it.
That's great. We're going to transition the last couple of minutes we have into a time of question and answer. And so if you have a question about how your specific situation, maybe like you have a deep well sitting here ready to answer your questions, for whatever the price is of admission that you paid for this conference. So you can ask a question without having to, we're not going to charge you any extra. And here you got four great voices that are ready to respond. So if you have a question, just introduce yourself. And then if we can, just like try to bite-size the answers so that we can get to some other questions as well.
Yeah, so my name is Daniel Hubler. I'm a next generation pastor at Spirit Church in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. So we've been full go since like July because Oklahoma's insane and we don't care. But the biggest thing that I feel like we kind of missed an opportunity on is to more develop our social presence on media and through different opportunities to engage people where they're at. And for you guys that are still struggling with lockdown, what is something that you grew and you were intentional in helping develop your engagement? So like not just posting service on a Sunday, but what kind of strategies did you take to be present on media more effectively than you had before COVID?
Well, I think you're right in saying it's really engagement. I think if COVID's taught us anything, it's this, and it's going to reshape the future, I believe, of the post-pandemic church, that content no longer is king. I would even go as far now as to say, as we're getting ready to go back this Sunday, that even the quality and the level of excellence that you have in your worship experience and worship environments is no longer king. Anybody can consume that content anytime they want, and it's going to be better than whatever you deliver. Because somebody always does it better. Somebody preaches better. So I think right now what and I would push back on if you guys read Carey Nieuwhof's blog a little bit, but trying to make saying that the in-person service the online is equal to the in-person. And I don't believe that's true at all. It doesn't measure with my theology, number one, going back to scripture, right? But because something special happens, and especially as charismatics, I mean, if anybody has a right to say this, it's us. Something special happens when the people have gathered together in the flesh, and the Spirit of God comes and He speaks through His Word, through the preaching, through the collaborative, connection in the community. So I would say, I wouldn't say don't worry about social media. You have to have a presence online and your reputation management, whatever that is. But it's all about creating opportunity for people to connect back in person. So that's what we've been trying to do, drive people to come back to church, to connect in person, because that is greater than, not equal to, whatever happens on social media. Get them back in the same room together. And even our services are going to be shorter intentionally, because I think what's going to happen in the lobby is going to be so much more important than what happens on the stage or in the auditorium. So if you don't have the greatest musical, worship or preaching or lights or video, it doesn't matter anymore.
Right.
What matters most is how you intentionally create opportunity for people to connect face to face.
We hear that about this conference all the time. They're like, we love the sessions, we love the music, we love the breakouts, but what they really love is the time in between every session. And so I think you're right. Content can be consumed anywhere and everywhere, and community is king now.
Anyone else?
Yep.
Hello, my name is Randall, and my husband and I were planting a church in Los Angeles, and so I'm right there with you, Pastor John. But I do have a question. I forgot your name, from Pennsylvania.
Dave.
Dave, you mentioned being proactive in talking about race kind of stuff and all that stuff, and being in Los Angeles, there's all kinds of different opinions, more on the blue side, I have learned. We just moved there. But what are just maybe some practical ways, like, I don't know if it's a sermon series, and anyone can answer this, but what are the practical things? Like, how do you be proactive in talking about those things on a Sunday morning or whatever it is?
I just think, it's how you live your life. So if it's through social media, it should be a true, authentic reflection of who you really are as a person, who you hang with, who you talk with, who your friends are, who you do your Instagram videos with, and all that kind of stuff. And you're modeling it for them, and it's just really out of the overflow of your own life. But in terms of, corporately, I think these are intentional issues that churches should be speaking about on a regular basis. That's through sermon series, it's through whatever curriculum that you have, through, your small groups or your student or youth or kids programming. And, and I just invite a lot of my friends, many of which are black, quite honestly. I do have white friends, and there's some of them here, but whenever I have a white friend that actually comes and speaks for me, I'm like, I really do have white friends, I promise you. And they laugh. And that's another thing. We use a lot of humor. And, you saw Bianca do that beautifully, flawlessly the other night. That kind of humor, when people can just start to laugh at themselves, and you ever say, where are my Puerto Ricans at? And they scream and yell, right? And I'm like, you're always the loudest in the room, and they get all mad. I'm like, well, you gonna cut me? And they laugh. And so you can joke about, and then we'll have guys from Duck Dynasty come to the church and tell funny stories about hunting. So I think using intentional humor, being who you are, don't take yourself too seriously, and create that kind of culture that embraces, and celebrates the differences of all God's, beauty.
If I could add to that, you're even more blue than I'm blue. I got a little red going on in the high desert, but you're as blue as it can get. And I think it's really important that you read the readiness of the people to receive. Now, that is not at all trying to attack watering down the gospel, and I am not at all about that. But there's moments where God gives us wisdom as to how to navigate that and figure out what's the readiness for people to receive certain things. And I think it's important, especially if you guys are new on doing this, especially coming from out of the area, you get a really good read of the culture that you're trying to reach before you start tackling some tough subjects. That would just be a piece of wisdom I would offer.
Mike, would it be right if I just added to something that Pastor Dave said?
Yes, please
I love
do.
his answer so good because his answer wasn't how to build a unified church. It was, here's my diverse life.
Right.
Yes.
I've got black friends. Whenever a pastor asks me, how can I have a more politically diverse church? Do you have politically diverse friends? How can I get more Puerto Rican people to come to church? I'm like, do you know any? Because that's a good start, having someone in your phone book. So I just love that you start with your life first, and then your church becomes just an expression of your life.
Yeah, love it.
For us, I think one of the biggest questions I'd have, how are y'all allowing your teams, getting your teams excited through this season and keeping them where they're engaged through this time? I'd love to hear that. And also I have to say the Red Sox suck.
Go Yankees.
Yeah. I just want to publicly rebuke
Come
Daryl
to the
Wickard
front
in the
right
name
now.
of
We'll
Jesus.
lay
That
hands,
was a demon
deliverance.
manifestation that I'm a Red Sox fan from being up in New Hampshire for about 5 years, so that was a little personal. Dang, Daryl. Thought we were friends. But I think, kind of going back to one of the earlier questions with the online, because our area opened up rather quickly, we were running with the people who were coming. However, probably like most of you guys, half of our people had come back. No matter, it'd go from 40 to 60%. And then we just, at the beginning of the year, I just was like, digital's not going away. There's people that, even when the mask comes off, they're vulnerable, they're older people that are just not ready. And for a while, I was like, well, we're just going to run with the people that show up. It's all about in person. Jesus came in person, it was like, and the Lord really convicted my heart that we need to not be disconnected from our vulnerable, our older crowd, and people who are new, who digital will be the front door. And so we began to just really pray, and I had a burden and a brokenness, and with our team, and I said, although we do Facebook Live, we have online service, it's like they're flies on the wall. And so we began to say, all right, let's put our very best in this. And so I asked our executive pastor ministry, will you pray about being our online campus pastor? And we went from just elevating it, saying, yeah, we want you to be in person. Eventually it'll come, but the reality is it may be a year. And so we took him, and then we just re-strategized our 15 minutes before service and after, and developed like this is an online. You're not going to be a fly on the wall, but we took our executive pastor, who's the new pastor, and then who's the very best at social media in our church. And it happened to be a guy who got saved, became a small group leader, and his name is Bill Taylor, and he's the weather guy in our city. He's got like 30,000 followers, but he's genius with social media, going Facebook Live. So we put those two together, and 15 minutes before and then 15 minutes after service has been a game changer with connecting with those who felt like as time goes on, they're further and further disconnected, but now we're at the beginning connecting with them, but at the end, we have a separate prayer time that they're not in the service. They're asking questions. People are getting saved. They're taking the time to call out people who, Don, who's feeling lonely, and they're saying their name. They're praying with them online, and now we're like going, all right, how can we get these people into online small groups? It may be only for a season. We need to get them in person, but this is how, one of the new things, Daryl, and then probably addresses your question as well, how can we maximize the reality of the session that we're in right now? What do you do, Mike, digitally?
Well, I'm not on this panel technically. I'm just the host. But you were asking about how do you make your teams excited about coming back. That's been our greatest challenge. We actually changed our staff meeting to be from Monday mornings to Monday evenings, and we opened it up to all of our volunteer leaders too. Because what we felt like we lost in COVID were two things that you really can't buy on Amazon, culture and momentum. They were the two things that immediately we felt like we'd stepped back probably 2 or 3 years. And so how do we regain 2 or 3 years of momentum, and how do we regain 2 or 3 years of church culture? And the way that you do that is by trying to get church culture infused into as many volunteers as possible. The people I pay, they know the church culture because it's their job. But what I'm trying to do is to get our kids workers, our nursery volunteers, our experience hosts, all of our musicians back into feeling like they're a part of Focus Church. And so we moved our staff meeting to Monday night so that people that work a normal job can join us. So we now have a volunteer open staff meeting and I teach the same content I would have taught to my staff. I now teach to about 45 of our leaders, and we go from one campus to another. So we have 2 locations. One Monday we spend at our East campus, and then the next Monday we spend at our West campus. And every other Monday we're at either of those campuses. And what we're doing is the same thing that we did when we started the church, which was meet around people who don't work at the church's schedule, which was in the evenings. So for us, it's Monday evening, and then really try to include as many people as possible in the leadership process now. Because what we've realized is that people are coming back, but they're not putting the lanyard back on to serve. And so like, oh, I'll sit in a service, Pastor. It's a really good church service. Well, you used to serve in kids ministry. You had for 20 years. What happened? Oh, I really like the service, Pastor. It's like hard to get them to take that next step. So we're really trying to infuse culture and build momentum, the two things that I believe the church lost last year.
Here's something we're working on right now, and if you want to ask your next question, but maybe Daryl, this might help you. If you read the Barna research, 20% of your core, I'm not talking about fringe, I'm not talking about weekend-only people, I'm talking about 20% of your core, your dream team, your kingdom builders, whatever you call them, they're gone. They are not watching online. They're not showing up on the weekend. They're not even consuming content from somewhere else that's better than what I can do or you can do. They're gone.
Right.
And Jesus said, if a man has 100 sheep and goes to check the pen and there's only 99, he leaves the 99 to go for the one. We have 20 times that factor going on right now in America, in the church. 20 times that. Who's going after them? Who in your church is? So here's our plan right now, Daryl. We are building an army. We are assembling 400 people right now to go after about 2,500 that are gone. We know their names. We have their cell numbers. We know where they live. They used to be in a small group. They used to be on a serve team.
We know the last time that they gave.
We know the last time they gave. And so we're assembling an army. And here's how we're doing this right now. This Sunday in our leadership, where we do it all on Zoom, and we try to create opportunities for people just to have conversations. And so here's the question. This is like the big training. My wife and I will start and tell our story. Here's what it's like for us as a family to go through COVID and not to be in person services. This is the impact it's had on our marriage. This is the impact it's had on our kids, on the spiritual health of our family and our life. And we talk about, and we're real. And appropriately, vulnerable in those situations. You got to be careful who you bleed on, right? And so we'll tell that, and then we say, okay, now we want all of you, as you go to your breakout, you tell your story. What's this impact? What impact has this had on your walk with God, on your mental health, on your marriage, your relationship, your family? You get them. We've already done it once. We're going to do it. Dude, the most amazing stories have come back. It's so much better than like a 20-minute, TED Talk and we rally the troops just to get them telling their stories. Now, listen to this. You guys are leaders. This is what's happening in our whole church to 20% of our core. Right. And so, I told the story of the Good Samaritan. We always want to, bust on the two guys that walk by, the priest and the Levite. And they were busy, and they probably just thought somebody else was coming. And I said to what if nobody else is coming?
Right.
What if you're it? Who's going to go after that 20%? If we don't, maybe nobody else goes. And so that has, sparked something inside just the heart because it's connected to their story. and they're on the inside.
Right.
And so it's developing and now we have all these stories coming in of, just listen to the whisper of the Holy Spirit. If somebody text them, I miss you.
Right.
That's not hard. We don't have to overcomplicate this. We just have to be intentional about motivating, activating our people to just do these basic things.
So good.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
We hand-delivered flowers to every mother in our database on Mother's Day to their porch. So we piled up in vans, spread out all across the city, and then we would just knock on their door, leave, and there was a rose on everybody. Because I think that the church is beyond digital, like you were saying. They want community, and some that can't come out of their house, when they show up and see a rose from the church that they haven't been in 8 months, a year, they're definitely not going to look for another church when they do decide to come back, because no one else left that.
I really think this is the modern day shepherd staff. Every text you send is read within 3 minutes of you sending it.
For sure.
And this is the staff of the shepherd to go after the sheep that are lost. It's right here in your pocket. And it takes 2 seconds to say, hey, I miss you. How are you? Are you okay? I've been thinking about you. And you can get you don't need some big expensive marketing plan to do that. You just activate the people. And here's the deal. They want to be activated. They want to be inspired to live out the way of Jesus and go after lost sheep.
That's something you write down that I've told our staff. Reaching out is the new outreach.
It's really good.
Well, and the lost sheep, here's the other thing about this. It was once in the pen. It's not like they're just like these sinners.
Right.
The lost sheep was in the freaking pen.
Right.
And it got distracted. Life happens.
Really
COVID
good.
happens. These are good people. They just lost their way or they fell down. They just need somebody to freaking just send a text.
It's really good.
Anyway, I get passionate about it. I'm sorry.
All good. This is all good. Brian Fisher from Point Pleasant, New Jersey. Good to have a Northeast guy up there. My question is just different strategies that you guys are thinking to help people overcome the habit and hesitation to come back to church. We still have, most of you folks probably have about 50 to 60% watching online, and so we're just looking at different ways of getting them back involved. So the last two, the conversation's starting to evolve in a way that's been very also helpful to kind of hear those different strategies. So I just want to know a little bit more about that. Cool.
So to talk about the fact that every time we have an opportunity that we would say, we miss you, whether it's online or not, and back to the online side of things, we also have somebody hosting prior to the service and after the service. And so we're checking up on who's in the chat room, what's happening with that. Okay. Every time we have a chance, we're saying statements like, we miss you, we'd love to have you back, but we also feel like we want to be careful that we're not pushing on people, because you push on people too much in this season, and they're going to feel like, okay, I'm being pressured to do something. So it's a line that we have to walk carefully. I'm not sure if we're always necessarily doing it right, but we're trying to encourage people to re-engage.
We've looked at a couple of big holidays, right? Easter's coming up. It's about 4 Sundays away. And I took the last 5 Sundays off. So this is the first time ever that I did not preach for 5. I have not preached for 5 weeks straight. And I've taken the last 5 weeks to prepare for Sunday, Easter Sunday, and created a strategy. 2 things that we're doing. Number 1, we're doing what's called the Comeback Conference. So we're having every volunteer or everyone that wants to be a volunteer, or if they're breathing and might be a volunteer, they might have just got out of prison, but man, if they can pass a background check, they can serve in kids ministry at this point. Like, it's everyone, all hands on deck. So we have the Comeback Conference. That's 3 weeks before Easter Sunday. And then on Easter, we're just going all in. We're having an online Good Friday service, but no streaming on Easter Sunday. I don't know if that's breaking any of the rules. These guys probably will disagree with me. But we want to do is create an appetite for in-person while not neglecting online, but we want to create custom content for online on Good Friday while creating an appetite for people to come back on Easter Sunday. And so the whole series is called The Comeback. Easter Sunday is called the greatest comeback of all time. And, it's almost subliminal messaging, like, come back, but it's the comeback.
And it's easy, though, but for the people who don't feel ready to come back, to feel like
do they, the church, feel like I don't have any faith? You know, do they still feel lonely and forgotten? And we can't forget, because if we ignore that emotional state, they will be that 20%. Over Christmas break, my wife Stephanie got COVID, so she couldn't be there for our Christmas services. And even for 2 weeks, she was quarantined in our house. And so there was like this little chair outside our bedroom that we would have our moments, and I'm talking with her and doing the best I can to have a relationship, who's someone who's very affectionate. But the Lord allowed me to go through that experience with her to really have more empathy with those at home still. And I remember setting up a chair on stage and looking in the camera and looking at those who are still at home and still empathizing that hey, you're not forgotten. We love you. There's going to come a time, you know, where you're still part of this family, leaning in, caring. We want to connect with you. And then when they start to feel ready, maybe there's things that you can do, like you guys are doing. Maybe it's if you have multiple, do you guys have multiple services? All right, so maybe you have one that says, all right, we're going to be mask only. You know, we're still going to do some of the social distances. This one, it's a little bit more progressive and open for people who are ready to go.
Yeah. And I would also add, as much as you can serve in your community, we've had so many people come to serve in a smaller setting outside of the church that then, because they came and had a safe experience, then they came back on a Sunday morning. So lot of our soldiers, lot of our families that just had disconnected, they came to serve, and they're like, oh yeah, this is why I love Jesus and why I need to be back in community, or because it is safe and you're paying attention. Yeah.
Our elder board is over 50% African American, so there's 7 elders, 4 of which are African American. I haven't seen them all year, but they do come and serve in the parking lot, wave at every car that comes in, and then go home to watch the online service. And so we do see them willing to serve in places, our most vulnerable, older, more susceptible population. They're willing, I think, to serve if they're guaranteed safety. And so that might be one way too, is to you're guaranteed safety if you work in the parking lot at Focus Church. No one's going to breathe on you. No one's going to do anything. And you can feel fulfilled. And I'm not going to even be mad at you for driving away, right? As service, 10 minutes after service starts, I'm not even mad at you. The fact that you came to serve and you still, call this church your home, and you haven't missed a Sunday from serving, it's a big deal. So maybe opportunities that are hyper safe. Right? You could stand on the roof and wave, and no one will be around you, and you might fall off the roof. That might be the more dangerous part, but you won't interact with people, so it's key.
Well, we've run out of time. We have a culture of honor here at our tribe, and so if you would please just stand on your feet and let the pastors know how grateful we are for their time. Put our hands together. Thank you all so much for giving of your time, talent, experience. We appreciate you so much.